Chapter 1. The invitation. It was the summer of 1978, and I had just graduated from college in Seattle. My name is Alex Harper, and back then, I was 22, full of that restless energy that comes with youth and no real responsibilities. My buddies, Tom Riley, a burly guy from Chicago with a laugh that could shake walls, and Sarah Jenkins, my on-again, off-again girlfriend from Portland, had been talking about a road trip for months. We wanted something different, something beyond the usual American highways. That's when Tom's uncle, a logger who'd spent years up north, mentioned a remote spot in Canada. Banff's too touristy, he said over a beer one evening. Head to Jasper in Alberta. Real wilderness. Lakes like mirrors, mountains that touch the sky. But watch out for the backcountry. It's not for the faint-hearted. We laughed it off, but the idea stuck. Jasper sounded perfect, isolated, beautiful, and just foreign enough to feel like an adventure. We were Americans through and through. Tom with his Midwestern drawl, Sarah with her West Coast optimism, and me, the pragmatic one from the rainy Northwest. None of us had been to Canada before, except for a quick border hop to Vancouver once. We packed Tom's old Ford pickup with tents, fishing gear, canned food, and a case of beer. The plan was simple: drive up through British Columbia, cross into Alberta, and spend a week hiking and camping in Jasper National Park. What we didn't know was that the park held secrets older than the mountains themselves, whispers of things that didn't belong in the light of day. The drive took 2 days. We crossed the border at a quiet checkpoint, the guard barely glancing at our passports before waving us through. The landscape changed gradually, dense forests giving way to jagged peaks. By the time we reached Jasper, a small town nestled in the Rockies, the air was crisp and pine-scented. We stocked up on supplies at a general store where the clerk, an older man with a thick beard, eyed us curiously. Americans, eh? Heading into the backwoods. He chuckled, but there was something in his eyes, a warning, maybe. Stick to the trails. Folks get lost out there. We ignored it, of course. Youth makes you invincible. That first night, we set up camp near Maligny Lake, the water so still it reflected the stars like a black mirror. We built a fire, roasted marshmallows, and shared stories under the vast sky. Tom talked about his dreams of starting a business back home. Sarah sketched the mountains in her notebook. I just stared into the flames, feeling a rare peace. But as the fire died down, a chill crept in, not just from the dropping temperature, but something deeper. In the distance, a howl echoed through the trees. Wolves, we told ourselves. Nothing more. Chapter 2. The first signs. The next morning dawned clear and cold. We laced up our boots and set off on a trail that promised stunning views of the Athabasca Glacier. The path was rugged, winding through dense spruce forest where the ground was soft with fallen needles. Sarah led the way, her ponytail swinging with each step. "This is amazing," she said, stopping to photograph a cluster of wildflowers. Tom and I trailed behind, carrying the heavier packs. About 2 hours in, we came across an old signpost, weathered and half buried in moss. It read Spirit Valley Trail, closed. No explanation, just that single word, closed. Tom grinned. "What do you think?" "Adventure calls." Sarah hesitated, but I shrugged. "Probably just avalanche risk or something. We're not kids, we can handle it." So we veered off the main path, following the faint trail into denser woods. The air grew thicker, the trees closer together, blocking out the sun. Birds stopped singing. The only sound was our footsteps crunching on the underbrush. That's when we found the first oddity. A small clearing with what looked like remnants of an old campsite. Charred logs around a fire pit, tattered fabric caught in the branches. But scattered around were bones. Animal bones, we assumed at first, but Sarah picked one up and frowned. "This looks human," she whispered. It was a femur, cracked and gnawed. Tom laughed nervously. "Nah, probably a deer. Let's keep going." But the mood had shifted. We pressed on, the trail narrowing until it was barely visible. By midday, We reached a small lake, its surface unnaturally still. No ripples, no fish jumping. As we sat to eat lunch, a fog rolled in from the mountains, thick and cloying. Visibility dropped to a few feet. We should head back, I said, but Tom insisted on exploring a bit more. That's when we heard it, a low murmur, like voices in the distance. We froze, straining to listen. It sounded like chanting, rhythmic and foreign. Sarah grabbed my arm. "What is that?" We called out, but no one answered. The fog lifted as suddenly as it came, and the sounds vanished. We laughed it off as wind or echoes, but deep down, I felt that primitive tug. Something was wrong. Chapter 3. The stranger. We made it back to our main camp by late afternoon, shaken but trying to shake it off with beer and cards. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks, a man emerged from the trees. He was tall, gaunt, with weathered skin and eyes that seemed too deep set. Dressed in faded flannel and boots caked in mud, he carried a rifle slung over his shoulder. "Evening," he said in a gravelly voice with a faint Canadian accent. "Name's Elias. Local trapper. Saw your fire." We invited him to sit, offering a beer. He accepted, squatting by the flames. Elias told stories of the area, how Jasper had been a fur trading post in the 1800s, how indigenous legends spoke of spirits in the valleys that lured travelers astray. "Ever hear of the Windigo?" he asked, his eyes glinting. Tom perked up. "The cannibal monster?" "Yeah, from Algonquin myths." Elias nodded slowly. "Not just myths up here. People go missing. Blame it on bears or falls, but sometimes it's something else." Sarah shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. "Have you seen anything?" Elias stared into the fire. "Once, years ago, group of hikers, Americans like you, found their camp torn apart. No bodies, just signs." He didn't elaborate, and we didn't press. As he left, melting back into the shadows, he warned us, "Stay out of Spirit Valley. It's cursed." We nodded, but curiosity burned brighter than fear. That night, sleep came fitfully. I dreamed of shadows moving through the trees, whispers calling my name. When I woke at dawn, Sarah was already up, looking pale. "I heard something outside the tent," she said, "like footsteps circling us." Tom dismissed it as animals, but I noticed fresh prints in the dirt, human-sized, barefoot. Chapter 4. Deeper into the woods, emboldened by daylight, we decided to return to Spirit Valley. "Just to check it out," Tom said. "What's the harm?" Sarah was reluctant, but we outvoted her. The trail felt different this time, more oppressive, the air heavy with the scent of decay. We hiked deeper, passing the bone-strewn clearing without stopping. Hours in, we found an abandoned cabin, its roof sagging, windows shattered. Vines choked the walls, and the door hung ajar. Inside, dust motes danced in the faint light. Old furniture lay in ruins, a rusted stove, a table overturned. On the walls, faded scratches, marks that looked like claws. Sarah found a journal wedged under a floorboard, its pages yellowed. The entries were from 1923, written by a prospector named Harlan. "The hunger comes at night," one read. "Voices promise relief, but the price." It trailed off into illegible scrawls. The as we read, a wind howled outside, slamming the door shut. We jumped, hearts pounding. Tom tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as shadows lengthened. Finally, with a shove, it gave way. Outside, the forest seemed closer, trees leaning in. We hurried back, but the trail twisted confusingly. Dusk fell early, and we got lost. Flashlights pierced the dark, revealing eyes reflecting back. Animals. We hoped. We stumbled upon our path eventually, reaching camp exhausted. That night, the howls returned, closer. Sarah clung to me. "We should leave tomorrow." But Tom, stubborn as ever, wanted one more day. Chapter 5. The descent. The next morning, Tom was gone. His sleeping bag empty, boots missing. We searched frantically, calling his name. Tracks led towards Spirit Valley. He must have gone exploring alone, Sarah said, voice trembling. We followed, hearts heavy with dread. The forest swallowed sounds. Our shouts echoed mockingly. Deeper in, we found his backpack, torn open, contents scattered. Blood stained the ground, fresh, red. Sarah screamed. Then, a figure in the trees. Tom, staggering, clothes ripped, eyes wild. It got me, he gasped, collapsing. Bites covered his arms, deep, festering. The thing, it's hungry. We half carried him back to camp, bandaging as best we could. Fever setting quickly. He raved about shadows with teeth, voices urging him to eat. Windigo, he muttered. We decided to pack up and drive to town. But as night fell, Tom's condition worsened. He thrashed, snarling like an animal. Chapter 6. Isolation in Jasper Town. The doctor shook his head. Infection, maybe rabies. We'll keep him overnight. Sarah and I waited in a dingy motel, the neon sign buzzing outside. Sleep evaded us. Every creak was a threat. At midnight, a knock. Elias stood there, rifle in hand. Heard about your friend. It started, he explained, the Windigo curse, born of desperation in harsh winters, turning men into cannibals. Your friend trespassed. Now it's in him. We dismissed it as folklore, but doubt gnawed. Back at the hospital, Tom was restrained, foaming at the mouth. Kill me, he begged, before I hurt you. We left him there, promising to return. But that night, alarms blared. Tom had escaped, breaking through a window. Chapter 7. The hunt panic gripped the town. Search parties formed, but we knew where he'd go, back to the valley. Elias joined us, armed. Only way to end it is fire or silver, he said grimly. The hike was nightmarish. Fog shrouded the trails. Whispers taunted us that we found signs. Shredded animals, human-like prints. Then, a scream. In a clearing, Tom, or what was left, crouched over a deer, tearing flesh. His skin was pale, elongated. Eyes glowed yellow. Join me, he growled, voice not his own. Elias raised his rifle, but Tom lunged. Chaos erupted. Shots fired. Sarah fell, scratched. Tom fled into the dark. Chapter 8. The turning. Sarah's wounds festered unnaturally. Fever came, then hunger. I can't hear it, she whispered. Calling. I barricaded us in the motel, but she grew restless, eyes changing. Elias arrived with herbs and incantations, old indigenous remedies. Fight it, he urged, but the curse spread. Villagers whispered of past outbreaks in the 1930s when loggers vanished. I felt it too, a gnawing emptiness. Dreams of feasting on friends. Chapter 9. Climax in the valley. We returned to Spirit Valley, Elias leading. Sarah, half mad, trailed. Tom waited in the cabin, transformed. Tall, skeletal, antler-like branches sprouting from his head. Americans, it hissed. Always meddling. Battle ensued. Elias fired silver bullets. I wielded an axe. Sarah turned on us briefly, but love pulled her back. In the frenzy, Tom impaled himself on a branch, bursting into flames unnaturally. Chapter 10. Aftermath. The curse lifted, but scars remained. Sarah recovered slowly. We married back in the States, but nightmares persisted. Elias vanished, perhaps claimed. We never returned to Canada. The mountains hold their secrets, and we, mere visitors, paid the price. Sometimes, in winter winds, I hear the whispers still. Conclusion. The drive back across the border into Michigan was a silent affair. The hum of the Chevrolet's engine, the only sound breaking the heavy air inside the car. Emily sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap, staring out the window at the endless stretch of pines blurring past. Her face was pale, the bandage on her arm a stark white against her skin, the wound beneath no longer festering, but a constant reminder of the horror we'd faced on Pie Island. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my left leg aching from the old shrapnel wound. now joined by new bruises and scratches from the fight with the Windigo. The road stretched south, leading us back to the familiar. Detroit's smoky factories for me, Massachusetts' quiet towns for Emily, but nothing felt familiar anymore. The world had shifted, like a photograph slightly out of focus, and we were carrying something back with us, something intangible yet heavy, like the fog that had clung to us in Thunder Bay that we stopped at a diner in Marquette, the same one we'd visited on the way up, its checkered tablecloths and jukebox now feeling like relics from another life. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with a perm and a tired smile, poured us coffee without asking. "You folks look like you've seen better days," she said, eyeing Emily's bandage and my disheveled state. I forced a smile. "Long trip." She nodded, leaving us to our silence. Emily stirred her coffee endlessly, the spoon clinking against the mug. "Do you think it's really gone?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Her green eyes, once bright with hope, were shadowed, searching mine for reassurance I couldn't give. "The thing, the Windigo. Is it dead, Daniel?" I wanted to say yes, to tell her that the silver knife, plunged into the creature's heart as it burned in blue flames, had ended it. I wanted to believe that Lars's sacrifice, his chance and salt, had banished the spirit back to whatever ancient darkness it came from. But the truth was, I felt it still, a faint gnawing in my gut, a whisper in the quiet moments, like a radio signal from far away. "We killed it," I said, more to convince myself than her. "It's over." But her eyes held doubt, mirroring my own. We ate in silence, greasy eggs and toast that tasted like ash, paid, and drove on, the border crossing a blur of paperwork and a guard who barely looked at us. America welcomed us back, but it felt like we were strangers in our own land. Back in Detroit, I tried to slip back into routine. The auto plant where I worked as a machinist was hiring, the post-war boom fueling demand for cars. The factory was a cacophony of clanging metal, hissing steam, and shouted orders, a stark contrast to the eerie silence of Thunder Bay's forests. I rented a small apartment in a brick tenement near the Rouge River, its windows rattling with every passing truck. The work was grueling, 12-hour shifts bending steel, my hands calloused, my leg protesting, but it kept my mind busy. Yet, at night, when the city quieted and the streetlights cast long shadows, the memories crept in. I saw Jack's transformed face, his yellow eyes glowing with hunger, his voice a guttural mockery of the friend I'd known. I heard Lars's final words, "The heart, silver," and felt the weight of the knife in my hand. Sleep was elusive, broken by dreams of fog and claws, of Emily's screams and the Wendigo's roar. I'd wake drenched in sweat, the room closing in, and pour a shot of whiskey to steady my nerves that I wrote to Emily. Letters sent to the sanatorium in Concord where she'd admitted herself. Her replies were short, written in a shaky hand. "The doctors say it's shell shock, like what soldiers get. But they don't understand. I still hear it, Daniel, in the quiet. It wants me back." I sent back words of encouragement, lies about moving on, but I understood her fear. I felt it too, a pull, like a tide dragging me north. I stopped drinking coffee after dusk, afraid the caffeine would sharpen the whispers. Instead, I took to long walks along the river, the water's murmur a faint echo of Lake Superior's waves. Once, I thought I saw a shadow in the water, a long, thin form, but when I blinked, it was gone. Months passed, and I tried to rebuild. I joined a veterans group, sitting in church basements with other men who'd seen too much, their stories of Normandy and the Pacific blending with mine. We smoked cigarettes, drank weak coffee, and talked around the edges of our pain. I never mentioned Thunder Bay, never spoke of the Windigo. They'd think me mad, or worse, they'd believe me and carry that fear too. But one night, a man named Eddie, a former paratrooper with haunted eyes, leaned close. "You ever feel like something followed you home from the war?" he asked, his voice low. I froze, my cigarette burning to ash between my fingers. Like what? I said, cautious. He shrugged, staring into his cup. Something hungry. Watches me at night. I changed the subject, but his words lingered, a confirmation that maybe we hadn't left the darkness behind. In spring 1953, I received a call from Emily. She'd been released from the sanatorium, deemed stable by doctors who measured trauma with checklists. I'm coming to Detroit, she said, her voice stronger but still edged with something brittle. I need to see you. She arrived on a Greyhound bus, her hair longer, her face thinner, but her eyes still carried that shadow. We met at a bar near my apartment, a dimly lit place with a jukebox playing Sinatra. Over beers, she told me about the sanatorium, group therapy, sedatives, doctors who listened but didn't hear. They think it's grief for Jack or the war, she said, tracing the rim of her glass. But it's more. I dream of the cave, Daniel, the drawings, the bones. And I wake up starving, like I could eat the world. I nodded, my throat tight. I get it. I feel it too. We decided to face it together, to research what we'd encountered. The Detroit Public Library became our refuge, its oak tables piled with books on folklore, indigenous history, and the Great Lakes. We read about the Ojibwe, their tales of the Windigo as a warning against greed and cannibalism, a spirit born in harsh winters when survival meant unthinkable choices. One book, an old volume by a missionary from the 1800s, described sightings near Thunder Bay, loggers vanishing, camps found empty, bones scattered. The spirit moves through the land, it read, seeking those who disturb its rest. Emily underlined passages, her hands trembling. We disturbed it, she whispered. By going to that cave, by staying too long.